What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal here. I'm Jammin John.
Necrotic Nick.
And we are bringing you, guess what? Another album review, because that's what we do here. And we're going to go over one that I think both of us were fairly excited for. We've been fans of this band pretty much since they started. We are going to go over the latest offering from Phrenelith with Ashen Womb. This also comes out on the 7th of February on Mi Seko Un Ojo Records. This band formed in 2013 in Denmark. This is their third album overall. I got into them with their album Desolate Endscape, which I know both he and I love. We never got a chance to review it, but I think he went over it in a collection update, right?
I might have. I did review the second album, Chimera, which I thought was pretty good. Didn't quite hit as hard as Desolate Endscape, I'll be honest there. But I was still excited for this one.
And for those that don't know, this is pretty much cavernous, evil, filthy, disgusting death metal. Features current and former members of bands like Undergang, Hyperdontia, Sulphurous, and Chaotian.
All of which are awesome bands. So, by rule, that you figured that this would be absolutely awesome. And guess what? You would pretty much be right. Though I will say, this might be even heavier than Desolate Endscape. I think it's definitely heavier than Chimera. Chimera definitely felt a little bit more atmospheric, like it still had its, dissonant, ugly, just disgusting riffs. But this album is dense. This thing is thick with evil.
Yes.
And it's immediate. The opening track, which is kind of an intro, and I'm not going to complain about it because it's musical and it's awesome. No Amata, or however you say that word, is pretty much an instrumental. I think there's one lone gurgle in it, but you get these, gnarly, dissonant riffs, these hefty tremolos. You really get a sense of how just filthy this production is. And it is dominated by these just dense guitars. It's are gross.
Yeah, it's something else. It's almost a little too dense. And I say that lovingly because I love music, again, that sounds evil and dark and dense, but I mean, it's thick. It's thicker than a Snicker. It's thicker than a bag of 100 Snickers. It's suffocating.
Denser than a collapsed star. And when you get into the, first, real track on here, Astral Larva, I actually went back and listened to Desolate Endscape today. And I was kind of hyped up for this one. And I have to say, not only is this possibly heavier, but while I would definitely say this band is definitely a blend of a lot of old school, hefty, very evil sounding death metal bands, Morbid Angel, Incantation, Immolation, this one really takes a lot of its clues from Immolation. You can hear it in the riff work. It feels more dissonant this time. And across the board, there's just a ton of tremolos and harmonized tremolos, but they're done in different ways to keep this atmosphere very much kind of swirling about you like a dense miasma of I don't know what's in there. It's probably something really bad. Probably just don't touch it with your bare hands.
Razor blades and toenails and rabid dogs.
Eyeballs.
Yep.
Actual balls.
Actual balls.
And of course, dissonance. Tons of dissonance. The riff structure on here, it definitely screams Immolation. Even the vocals kind of have that Ross Dolan sort of roar. And even some of the drum patterns. The drum patterns, it kind of has that, that just hefty blast beat that Immolation's known for. And occasionally you will even hear them squeeze in a turnover in the middle of a groove, too. Much like Immolation.
It's got a lot of start-stop to the drum beats, much like Steve does. Now, granted, this guy is not as technical as Steve is on the drums, but it's got that kind of blast for a couple measures, stop. D-beat for a measure or two and stop. And then blast and then stop. In that aspect, it's very Immolation as far as the drum work is concerned. And the riffs kind of play out a little bit like that, too. There is a lot of melody going on. Melody, harmony.
Melody for us.
Right,
For
exactly.
people that don't listen to, just hyper-aggressive, dissonant, ugly death metal, it's just going to sound like things dying musically.
Yep. Songs like A Husk Wrung Dry, Stagnated Blood, the title track, Ashen Womb, the last massive track that there is, have a lot of actually catchy melodies in them. Again, catchy. But it's the way they're presented. They're very monotonous in a droning sort of hypnotic way. So whether or not you want to latch onto this, you're going to have to. Because they're going to drive it into your brain like a railroad spike.
And it's not a pleasant meditation on things. This is you kind of just sitting there with your eyes rolling back in your head, wondering if Satan's trying to communicate with you, like, through the riffs. Like, you should kill your family tonight. Like, it's late, though.
I'm not dressed for it. Sorry, Satan.
I'd have to stop and get gas. It's a real hassle. Can we do this tomorrow? But it does have its, like, melodic points, or at least melodic for this style. And they do like to, like, throw in interesting lead melodies. Occasionally a more melodic solo, like the one that shows up on Lithopadion. I'm not entirely sure what any of these words mean. There's a lot of words that I'm not familiar with here.
We are not from Denmark.
But these are in English. So
right.
we just suck at English, too. For the most part, the leads are, like, reverb-drenched dive bombs. Everything sounds like it's, like, pulling you down into the depths of hell. But occasionally, again, like, spots of melody. And even spots of groove on here, too. Because a lot of this, with this monotonous, tremolo-driven sound, I mean, it's a lot of blasting and a lot of, like, just, like, double time, like, like very Morbid Angel, sort of, like, hefty double bass stuff. Mm-hmm. But every now and then they kind of break it up and kind of, like, let the song breathe. Songs like, and this is going to be fun to say, Peyote. Whatever that is, Poeia. I don't know. That's a lot of vowels at the end there. It's like pregnant with vowels.
Poeia? Don't know.
Paprika. Got it.
Right. Chrysler Paprika. Nailed it.
That song is a big standout on here, namely for the fact that it kind of lets off of the droning tremolos and kind of breaks up with some, like, really clever, fun riffs. Of course, with their dissonant accents to make them sound nightmarish and evil. But this one kind of brings in a lot of groove, and it's not, like, again, the same grooves that really show up on a lot of this album. It kind of lets off the gas and the atmosphere. It's probably the least suffocating song on here, but at the same time, it's still dense, it's still heavy. But I kind of like the fact that there are some different kinds of riffs on this song that don't show up on the rest of the album, where the rest of the album is just demonstrating how much it wants to just suffocate you with darkness.
Ashen Womb, the title track, actually kind of has a little bit more going on to it. It's definitely more dynamic, and I would still call it groovy, per se. There are some very well-pronounced Morbid Angel chugs going on in the middle of there that you don't see really show up either, because I wouldn't call any of this chuggy, per se. For the most part, it's just low-end, evil, sinister as all hell tremolos.
But they harmonize them, again, in, like, different ways. Like, sometimes it's, like, a legit harmony that, sounds more musical, and then sometimes it's a harmony where it's so dissonant and atonal and ugly. Like, Stagnated Blood, the opening of that, like, they're very cold. They're very just, icy sounding, like, but not in a black metal way. It just sounds like this wall of dissonance that is greeted by this wall of riffy mud that comes together and creates something horrifying but very engaging. But I could say that kind of about most of this album, like, in terms of, like, just how heavy it is. Like, this album's got its foot on your throat by track 3. And honestly, it doesn't need that much atmosphere, like, additionally to be heavier, darker, more evil sounding. But that didn't stop them. They threw on some extra stuff. I'm not entirely sure if there are synths on here. It could be guitar effects. I'm not sure, but the title track, Lithopadion, and Stagnated Blood, there's points on there where there's this background drone, and it doesn't sound like the bass. It doesn't sound like guitars necessarily, though I'm not ruling out it could be like guitar synths or a weird effect or something like that. But there are points where they add just this additional layer of atmosphere, and it just, again, makes it sound that much more dark and just horrifying.
I had the same kind of guess, too, especially in Lithopadion. Like, synths with a question mark? It was enough to make me kind of try to dial in my listening and go, is that what it sounds like? I'm not sure that's what it is. It could be a guitar effect, but to add that kind of atmosphere on that many layers anyway is a pretty solid move.
The part that made me think it was synths or some sort of effect was the transitional track, Sphagium? Whatever that is. Samsonite. I was way off. That song, I don't know if I would call it a song, it's more of a transitional instrumental, is just the waves of noise. Honestly, it sounds like a chorus of, like, cruise ship horns played through the most apocalyptic filter that they could find, and then they threw some guitars on top of it. There might be some mutterings and stuff in there.
There's something.
It could be. I don't know. It could have just been, again, Satan telling us to kill our families or something.
It's very Portal-esque, actually. That's what it reminded me of, because there's some sort of whispers, and I can't tell if it's growling, and there's some tribal drums. It's a very unsettling 2 minutes.
Yeah, but the tribal drums also, they have a weird pattern, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the second you really feel like you're kind of, like, finding the rhythm on there, they feel like they're just kind of messing with you and gonna go off the beat. Mm-hmm. It's an unnerving, unsettling interlude, which honestly it fits with a lot of this anyway, because it's very dark. Like, this is possibly, again, heavier than Desolate Landscape, though I will say Desolate Landscape, I might prefer the production a little bit more on that one, just because there's a little bit more space and a little bit more breathing room, because the guitars in here gets so dominant that I kind of lost the drums at points, namely the snare. Sometimes the snare gets buried. If he's not doing that like flat out like full extension like Mike Smith style blast, sometimes those faster blast beats get a little bit lost underneath the dense layers of guitars.
But then again, that's kind of a trope for this kind of music anyway. I've gotten used to it over the years. It used to really piss me off when the snare got buried under heavy dense guitars, but I mean in this case, you know, I get it.
But even in this album's like more atmospheric moments too, there's nothing that lets off of like the intense feeling of dread that is all over here. The atmospheric melodic break in the title track, while it is softer than anything else on that song, it does not give you a feeling of calm at all. In fact, it just feels like, you know, whatever it was that's been stalking you is just kind of slinking back in the shadows, waiting for a chance to pounce and bite your head off.
But he's dancing a little bit at the same time. The drum and melody groove break there, it is a little funky. So the demon's not going to eat you today, he's going to slink back into his hole, but at the same time, he's having a good old time.
No, he's going to murder the shit out of you after he's done dancing.
Well,
because the song immediately starts getting heavy again. And it closes out with this really cool droning melody, which kind of bookends the start of this. Mm-hmm. This really does feel like a complete like piece here, and again, a very evil piece. As far as any like negatives on here, I mean, all right, the interlude track might have been a little bit much. Like this has got enough atmosphere on its own just by the band playing. Mm-hmm. It is, again, dense and dark, and it really doesn't need that much extra. The extra synths in here, I think, were pretty effective in their parts, but they're not used all the time, so you do get a reprieve from that. I will say that I could have used a few more tracks like Chrysler, Plymouth, or whatever it is. It just kind of broke up the monotony a little bit. Like you get, again, like a little bit more like riff variety there. It really does stand out on this album. But even with like their frequent tremolos, again, they find a way to make them catchy and unique. Like they do kind of stand out on the songs just because, again, they vary up how they use them.
I will state that it is altogether possible that this is a little too dense. It's not necessarily a dig, it's a lot. This is a very, very heavy record, and it is layered probably 170 times. Like, you got a lot going on there, and it is almost so dense at some times that you're just like, whoa, I need to breathe. I can't breathe. You gotta lift your foot up a little bit, you're crushing my larynx. But other than that, like, this is a damn good record. I thoroughly enjoyed how dark and evil this is. So overall, I'm going to give this record 4 stars. It is sinister and evil as all get out. As you all know, I'm a giant sucker for low-end tremolos. It's something that I've really latched onto over the years with my death metal, and this is full of that. It is surprisingly catchy. Again, not catchy in conventional standards by any means. This is catchy in the, if you love nasty, gross death metal with some melody in it, you're going to find it catchy. It's catchy in that sense. There's a lot of that. There's a lot more melody than I thought there would be for something, again, as heavy and as evil as this is, but it's there. And like I said, they will drive it like a railroad spike through your skull, whether or not you like it. It is also cool that it gets both riffier and more groovy towards the end of the record. Once you get past Nebulae or however you sound that, it really picks up on the riffs. Sans the unsettling interlude track, but, you know, whatever. It does get more riffier and groovier towards the end, and it's pretty much just a banger of a record. I really fucking enjoyed it. If you're into bands like Immolation and Morbid Angel and Incantation, and all the bands that we usually cite off during a review like this is that. You're going to want to give it a listen. Check it out for yourself.
I am also at a 4. I like this one more than Chimera. but I don't know if I like it more than Desolate Endscape. That album, I don't know. I think that's just an absolutely killer piece of work. But this is absolutely awesome too. Way more suffocating, way more pummeling. It's thick. Like, this is just an impenetrable wall of darkness that just rolls over you like a steamroller. It's still packed with riffs. It likes to kind of toy with riffs too. Again, like the frequent changing of all the tremolo harmonies and such. Waves of dissonance, horrifying vocals. The atmosphere just feels like it's squeezing you the entire time. Yeah, that all sounds like good stuff in terms of, like, you know, looking for dissonant, atmospheric, grimy, old school death metal. That is exactly what is on here. I will say that at points it can be a little bit much, but the overall vibe of it, like that whole hypnotic sort of, you know, thing that it does, it's pretty cool. Like, you really kind of get drawn into this one. Again, if you're a fan of any of the bands that we have mentioned, any of the bands that these guys are also in too.
Yeah, no shit.
And I'll even throw in a band like Desolate Shrine too, for good measure.
Word.
Check this album out. It is an absolute monster. And again, while you're at it, check out all the other bands that these guys are in, because all those bands are absolutely awesome too. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you were new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. Yeah, they are only 99 cents, and we do a members-only live stream as our lone perk, which we will be trying to do more like every month. We're still going to do some regular live streams just because we're doofuses and we like to talk on the internet.
That's what we do.
You guys are always awesome to talk to, but we kind of want to make the, you know, members only ones a little special just in terms of like what we can talk about. But memberships are the main way to support the channel now. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And of course, again, if you would like to join and become a member of this thing that we do, then there's a join button down there someplace.
And this thing that we do all for you guys. Tons of things like album reviews, discography rankings. We've got At the Gates coming up next. That'll be pretty sweet. Tons of discussion forums, multiple segments. Is it metal? Is it not metal? States of metal. Nick's never-ending collection updates. Tons of stuff all the time. That's what we do at Thralls of Metal. And we do it for you. We appreciate all of you, all of our family, our friends, our litany of subscribers. Jesus Christ, we're over 20,000. That's insane, you guys. We appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. We are eternally grateful.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming your way. So, one more big thank you because of all your rulage and all your awesomeness.
Thank you.
All the cool things you guys do. And we will catch you later.